We're going back to Mythic Legions 1.0 today. We're taking a look at an older figure. We have got GORGO AETHERBLADE on deck today. This is one I'm really excited to take out of the package and play around with. So we've got him there in the big window in the standard resealable Mythic Legions packaging. We've got a bio for this guy on the side, and then the back of this box has that original Legions artwork along with the write-up for Mythos' backstory. So let's pull him out and take a look. Alright guys, here he's out of the package, our GORGO AETHERBLADE figure, and this is one that as far as older figures goes, is one that I was really looking forward to getting my hands on, and thankfully I have done that. This figure though does have a couple issues in the paint department, but I really dig the overall design on this guy. He does of course use a very standard armor setup that we see a lot in this line, but the colors here is really what draws me in. Not to mention the fact that some of his accessories are slightly unique as well, at least in terms of color scheme. So we are of course going to take a look at Articulation first, just to see how this guy moves around real quick. So it's going to be, for the most part, exactly what you'd think. Of course, I do have the pauldrons and the soft goods cape on him, just because, you know, it's kind of how I do it with these figures with the capes. So he does have the pauldrons on. They do, of course, impede movement, but it's not really too bad anyway. So the head can move side to side, swivel all the way around. It's on a ball joint, so, you know, it's fully mobile. It goes up, he goes down, bobble side to side, full rotation. The pauldrons do move to help you with your arm articulation. So you go out, and then, of course, you can rotate all the way around. Of course, you know, with the pauldrons in there, you're going to hit them, but just know that they can move. We've got rotation at the elbow, single joint, rotation at the forearm. We've got rotation at the wrist, and then we've got a hinge down there as well. Being one of the older figures, he has one of the solid torsos, so there's no mid-torso cut on these older figures, and then they have just the ball peg at the waist for swivel, bobble side to side, back and forth, so pretty good range of motion. Legs go out, they kick forward, they kick back. You've got your thigh cut up there, single jointed knee with rotation, and then you've got rotation, rocker, and you've got hinges down at those ankles there. So, you know, it's exactly what you might expect for Legions in general, and especially for one of these older figures with that singular torso piece. Now, as is the case with, I don't know, a number of Legions figures, the big thing for me with this guy isn't so much articulation, it's the look and the feel. Not necessarily the sculpt on this guy, though, because we see these parts in this configuration pretty often, even in 1.0 up through Advent of Decay. These are kind of the standard parts that you have for your fully armored characters in one configuration or another, give or take a few different changes. But we see a lot of these parts, so it's all reuse. That's nothing too surprising. It's all about the colors, though. That's really what makes this guy stand out. You don't see a lot of red, especially this kind of saturated red, vibrant color in this line, and he definitely stands out among pretty much any other figure in the line. So I think the red and the black with the gold accents really works here. That said, I do think that the red is where I have my issue, because I've come to find, after looking through my figure and then just doing a little research on this guy, is that the red on this figure in general, or at least in a more widespread sense, it is not necessarily the best. My figure in particular does have a few paint slop issues here and there. So it's not the greatest, it's certainly not terrible, but it definitely leaves a little bit to be desired in some spots. Like on this waist piece here, there is some slop down towards the bottom, and there's a little bit of slop all through the legs. Granted, there's not a lot there to begin with, but it is noticeable. The chest is alright, the gorget is alright, and then the wrist guards are alright as well. So it's mostly just a few places down here, but when you see it, it's kind of hard to unsee it, because it is pretty noticeable once you get up close on it. Far away, you really may not notice it at all, outside of me kind of zooming in on it with the camera here. Beyond that, though, I do think the figure does look really nice. You know, despite those problems, the color scheme here is just phenomenal. I think it's really fantastic. I really like everything about it. Like I said, you know, he does of course have the pauldrons on there, because that's just what I do with the guys with the capes, and I think these pauldrons work really well. They are big and beefy, and you know, they carry that same color scheme and that same sculpt design throughout the body, so it makes him, you know, look a little more grandiose. And then of course we've got this red flowing cape, and it works really well. It's very close. It's not 100% the same color as the paint on the figure, but that's rarely the case. It's pretty difficult to match that a lot of times, but this works works really nicely. And this is another instance where I've kind of changed up what I do with how I peg these in. So I've got the arms popped out, and I put the outer holes through the arms, and then the two inner pegs were used with the pauldrons. And I think it makes it flow a little better. Looks a little more regal, you know, because this is a big bad. This is one of the big named characters in the line of faction leader. So it makes him look a little better. I think it makes it flow along him a lot nicer, and it just sits around his feet really, really well. I think it hangs just incredibly nicely that particular way. So in general, I do think that he does have a fantastic sculpt, and I love the color scheme. The red in certain places, though, does leave a little to be desired. Of course, we had to talk about this head sculpt because, well, for one, this is, as I've said a number of times, my favorite helmeted head sculpt in the line. I love this particular look. It never gets old for me, and seeing it in this particular color scheme absolutely does it for me. So we've got the black base with the gold accents and the red trim in there, and the head is thankfully painted really, really nicely. I love everything about it. And then for his horns, you know, we've got antlers this time around, which, while as impractical as that would likely be in battle, you can't deny that they look really stellar. There's a lot of wash on them. The paint is just neatly applied. It's very subtle, but at the same time, you can see that it just works really, really nicely to bring out the sculpt and just make him look so menacing and nasty. And then, of course, you've got the sculpt itself, and these guys are just fantastic. I love the antler aspect on some of the figures in this line, and this guy is no exception. Now, as far as accessories goes, being an older figure, this guy has a decent spread. He doesn't have tons. He's not going to rival an Advent of Decay figure for quantity, but what he does have I think works really well just because of the color scheme we've got. So continuing with the red and the black, we've got one of the more standard longswords in the line. So this guy, we've got a gray blade with a red hilt, black handle, and red pommel on it. Paint's pretty decent. It's not the greatest. It's certainly not terrible. You can see when you're really close to it, you can see little imperfections in the red. So it kind of carries through. It's a theme with this guy, but it looks fantastic in this color scheme. We have got this big monstrous axe here, and this was a mainstay in the original wave. A lot of figures came with this guy. So this isn't really rare or unique. It's not very common in the later figures, but a lot of early figures have it. And this guy has, you know, more of those red accents on it. He's got a huge single blade, and then you've got this little ornamentation on the back that you can actually pop off. And it comes with another piece, so you can make it a double-bladed monster axe. So you've got a lot of options just within the one weapon. And then the last thing he has is he's got his big shield. So we've got a dark gray base, so similar to the sword blade, and then you've got a red field with the Arethyr logo on there. And this guy, you know, for those that are keeping track of all the Mythic Legion stuff that's going on, this guy on the shield, that's the big demon lord that the Horsemen have been showing off that rides the big horse mount. So we're getting this guy in figure form at some point. We don't know when yet, but he is definitely coming. So it's really, really cool to see that stuff kind of carry through the line. And then the tampography on this is just stellar. It looks fantastic. Of course, this guy does come with one of the straps as well to kind of round him out. And then we've got, you know, the pauldrons as well as the cape. So in general, in terms of stuff that he comes packed with, he does have a lot. But as far as actual weaponry accessories goes, you've just got your sword, your axe, and your shield. So overall, there is obviously a paint issue on this figure. I know it's not unique to the one that I got a hold of, but I'm not too sure exactly how widespread it was. Beyond that, I really think the design is stellar. Of course, the QC issue does kind of leave a little bit to be desired, but I can't not like the overall look of this figure just because it just flows so well. The red, the black, the gold just works. He works really well with this long, flowing, vibrant red cape. The antlers really tie everything together. He comes with solid accessories, and he just looks so menacing. Unless you get really up close to him, you can't really see a lot of those paint imperfections, but at the same time, knowing they're there, you can't not see them either. Regardless, I'm glad I have him, and he is a fantastic looking figure. It's just a cool design, and I really can't argue with that. It's a cool looking figure. He has one of my favorite head sculpts. I was bound to like him no matter what, but he definitely isn't perfect. So that's going to do it for this look at the Mythic Legion's GORGO Aetherblade figure. Let me know what you guys think. Feel free to like, comment, subscribe, and share, and until next time.